afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is Executive Vice President Ryan Segmund acting as host. I'm joined today by our Director of Pricing and Analytics, Christopher Page, one of our national sales directors and natural gas consultation expert, Daryl Gwynn, and marketing manager Daniel Holdridge. And unfortunately have some audio issues on our side that is going to keep Henry on mute. So Henry, I know you're there, and we know that you're talking to us and guiding the troops in spirit and in inevitable follow-ups from this webinar. But we're really excited to have everyone on this one. We've been talking a lot about natural gas. Now that all of everyone from the TEA branch is part of the EMEX family, you guys all now have the capability of offering natural gas supply products to your customers. That's across the country. You, of course, also now have national access to selling electricity. So, and that's really where the natural gas play comes into, is on the national level. There is a little bit of opportunity for natural gas in Texas. However, not as much as there is in some other states. Now, before I give the mic over to Chris Page to give us a thorough breakdown of natural gas and the commodity information and the 101 of natural gas, if you will, I just want to go back to the website. And here we have an account profile for our natural gas. I just want to show everyone that if you look at this, and these are just fake numbers just to prove the point of a demo. At the heart of the opportunity for natural gas supply, it's very similar to electricity supply and what you're consulting. You're still looking at a customer's rate, and this time the measure of units isn't therms. It's not kilowatt hours, it's therms. And prices are closer to 50 cents or 40 cents per therm than they are to 5 cents or 4 therms per kWh. But we're still, and there's other nuances which we're about to get into, but at the heart of it, we're still looking at, we're talking to an eligible natural gas customer. You're saying, hey, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, what are you paying for your natural gas? Let me check with my suppliers. I can get you a better rate. I can save you as much money, or I can consult and hedge your power and price at the best rate going forward. So it's still, in essence, that same play. It's just with a different commodity and with some different ABCs and market information as such. But you're not going into a whole new world here. Natural gas is very similar to electricity in the gist of how it's all done. Now, just like electricity, one of the main things we focus on, and Chris, I'm just about to get you on here, but one of the main things we focus on for the electricity supply is the natural gas commodity. Well, as obvious as it might be, the natural gas commodity is even more directly correlated to natural gas supply costs. So just like we're looking at the Henry Hub for electricity trends and pricing trends, the natural gas supply also follows by those same trends. And as the commodity goes down, typically so do the natural gas supply prices. So that part is also very similar to electricity, even a little bit more directly correlated. With that, I also want to mention that there is Q&A for this webinar. So at any point that you have a question, type it in using the chat button on the WebEx, and please address it to host and panelists. And we'll make sure to address those questions either during this webinar or in a direct follow-up. So with that, now, Mr. Page, I'm going to open up our Natural Gas 101 webinar. And let's get started.
My name is Chris Page. I run our pricing and our operations groups here in Houston. What I wanted to do before we get into some of the specifics of the Texas natural gas market, I wanted to run through a bit of Natural Gas 101 with you. I'm pretty sure that not everyone here is familiar with exactly how the commodity works, how it's priced, etc. So I always feel that if you're going to sell something, you should have an appropriate understanding of the underlying basics of the product and the commodity itself in order to be more successful at selling that product. So just kind of, we'll go through some of this information fairly quickly. If you have any questions for me, please let me know at the end. I'll answer whatever I can. I also have some materials that if you want some additional documents, a copy of the slides, if you want a printout of the Texas natural gas overview that I've made, or just some more in-depth details of natural gas itself, I will be happy to provide that for you. So getting into it, first of all, what is natural gas? Natural gas exists abundantly in North America. It's usually going to be found in rocks that have an open, loose, porous structure, such as limestone, shale, sandstone. I'm sure that everyone's somewhat familiar that natural gas is going to be created by decaying organic matter over millions of years, which creates hydrocarbons, and these hydrocarbons eventually break down into natural gas and liquid petroleum. The primary component of natural gas is going to be methane. So how is this natural gas processed? Well, natural gas is going to be piped directly from what is called gathering zones into natural gas processing plants, which is going to be used to remove contaminants such as nitrogen, water, sulfur, carbon dioxide, in order to create the pipeline quality gas. Additionally, you can extract other gases from the basic natural gas that you have from the gathering zone, such as butane, ethane, etc. That's how we get some of these other associated gases. So once the pipeline quality gas has been produced, the gas will now begin its journey through the interstate pipeline system, or the interstate transmission pipeline, where it's heavily compressed, and it's going to be moved through a series of compressor stations, which are located approximately every 75 miles. Eventually, the gas will arrive at what is called a take station, which is operated by your local distribution company, the utility, before it passes through the city gate, and then it eventually arrives at the burner tip, which is the client's physical location. I did want to show everyone a basic map of the interstate and intrastate natural gas pipelines in the United States. As you can see, there is a heavy concentration in the Gulf Coast area. This is where the Henry Hub pipeline is located. There are several major natural gas producing regions in this area as well as we have a large infrastructure for refineries, offshore production, etc. This is going to be your older infrastructure. Additionally, you have another concentration in the Oklahoma area, and then you can see in the Pennsylvania, Ohio area, located around the Marcellus shale play, there is an emerging pipeline system there, which has definitely grown larger since this map was created and will continue to grow larger over time. One thing that I would like to point out, did we miss a slide? No, guess not. Okay, I had a map of the major oil and natural gas producing regions. I don't know if it got left out or if we skipped over it, but I can send it to everyone later. So one of the reasons why we've had such abundant natural gas in the United States is the emergence of shale gas in production. You can see on the graph on your left, we have shale gas production broken down by the particular region and shale play. Marcellus is our largest, our dominant shale field. It's where we have really seen the biggest explosion in natural gas And you can just see how the other regions stack up as well. And really beginning around 2008, once we discovered better technologies for fracking the gas, for moving gas and other methods, and really just understanding how much natural gas we had in the United States, you can see that the production has been quite significant since that time. The graph on your right, you can see how big shale gas has played into our overall production, as well as what our expectations are for the future. Right around 2008, we're looking at production, I believe that's 20 BCF per day, or I lost my unit of measurement on there. But you can see that going into 2040, it's pretty significant. So natural gas is going to continue to be a major fuel source here in the United States. We're going to find additional uses for it through especially electric generation. And then we're also going to see a lot of exports in the form of liquid natural gas as a direct result of this extra gas that we have. I did want to touch on production. So as you can see, with supply comes the increase in production of natural gas. You can see that it's been rising for some time since 2008 when we had this, shale boom first start to emerge. Over early 2015, we hit our peak. March of 2015 was actually a record-setting month in terms of production for natural gas in the United States. Since then, it did level off a bit. We approached that same peak again in March 2016, but since then we've started to see a decline. That's primarily just been because last year's winter was so mild. Prices began to really fall off quite a bit. We hit some major low points in the market, and as a result, there wasn't as much incentive for producers to produce this gas, so you saw a lot of oil fields shut down. So we will be looking forward to seeing these numbers rise again in the near future. Definitely throughout 2017 and 2018, that graph will be pointing upward again because higher natural gas prices will encourage more production. This is always an interesting graph. I just want you to understand exactly who is consuming gas in this country. You can see that our two major consumers of natural gas are going to be residential and commercial customers. Residential homes and commercial, you have small businesses, shopping malls, strip malls, storefronts, etc. You're going to have very large peaks and valleys in their consumption. Obviously, they're going to have peak usage during the wintertime when it's cold and they need that gas for heating, and then you have a significant drop-off during the summertime when they do not need it. Versus you have your industrial users, which are a little bit more steady. They do have some peaks and valleys in their usage, but overall their consumption is fairly steady. And then one of the newer emerging sources of natural gas demand has been electric generation, especially down here in Texas. And that number is going up considerably, and you can see how it peaks during the summertime when everyone else is usually peaking during the wintertime. Of course, we're using the natural gas to fire generation for electric cooling during those hot summer months. We can also see the future demand projections for natural gas. Residential, commercial, we expect those to rise as our population rises very slowly. Transportation, you're going to have a modest increase. There's always talk about natural gas-fired cars. We'll see how quickly that rises. But of course, our biggest drivers behind this growth, or this expected growth, is industrial and electric power sectors. In 2017 and 2018, we have a bevy of new chemical and fertilizer plants coming online. They've been under construction for many years now, and they are expected to be heavy energy consumers. And we should see that trend continue in the future. I know there's a lot of other projects that have been under construction or going through regulatory phases right now. but there is definitely a bit of an industrial comeback rallied around natural gas and how cheaply and efficiently it is used. You can see that electric power, while we do anticipate a drop-off over time through various, the Clean Power Act, et cetera, you're going to see less of an impact from coal and more of an impact from natural gas and electric power. Of course, we'll see if any of these regulations are scaled back now that the Obama administration is finished. Hard to say, but I would definitely expect to see a greater reliance on natural gas for electric power in the future, just because of how efficient it is. The new plants are really geared around efficiency and natural gas usage, and frankly, it's just cheaper and more abundant than coal these days. So in order for us to understand the major price points of natural gas in the United States markets, we look at Henry Hub and NYMEX. So the Henry Hub pipeline is located in Erath, Louisiana, serves as the official benchmark pricing point for natural gas futures traded on the New York Mercantile Exchange, or NYMEX. Prices traded on the Henry Hub pipeline and NYMEX are generally seen as the primary price point for the entire North American natural gas market. And just to go over a bit of terminology real quick, when we look at natural gas prices, when they're traded on NYMEX, they're going to be priced in dollars per MMBTU. So you see the unit, I can't really read it, it's kind of small, but you can see February 2017, the last price when I pulled that was around, I think that says $3.38 per MMBTU.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about how gas is metered, well, gas is going to be metered thermally in therms. So you can divide that number by 10. So it's a bit confusing when you're looking at a natural gas bill. You just have to look at the terminology they're using. Are they billing and measuring the gas in MMBTUs, MCF, decatherms, or therms? An MMBTU is equal to an MCF is equal to a decatherm. It's all 10 therms. There's some slight conversion factors that go into play, but for simplicity, it's the same.
And we and your analysts here at EMEX are completely equipped to help go through those, to translate that, to get it all figured out.
Right. So I just wanted to point that out in case you're looking at a bill and you say, well, you're paying $3.80 per therm. No, look at the unit of measurement. It varies by supplier who wants to display it in which unit of measurement. It's kind of like megawatt hours and kilowatt hours in the electric side.
So we're certainly here to help translate that. We like to present as much knowledge as possible, but at the end of the day, we're here to help you guys be successful in selling power and energy and consulting your customers. So we've got your back on all of the technical elements.
Right. And for simplicity as well, in continuity, we will display all of our prices and all of our units of measurement on our website in therms. We don't want to have multiple units of measurement clouding the issue. So now that we understand how the prices are traded, here is a graph showing the historical NYMEX settlements. As you can see, right now we're in a period of very low prices historically. You can see that there have been some pretty dramatic price spikes over the years. 2002, late 2005, primarily due to supply constraints, supply issues. 2005 especially was following Hurricane Katrina. There was a significant disruption to the Gulf Coast producing regions, which was, before we really had the Marcellus Shale region where most of our shale gas is coming from. If there's a hurricane that disrupted supply in the Gulf, well, that caused prices to spike. Now we can absorb that. We don't necessarily have supply issues to fear if a hurricane approaches that region now. It'll still rattle the market. It'll still cause a slight uptick, but it's not going to have the same effect that it had in years past. And you can see again in 2008, we had another price spike because that's when oil was, everyone's saying it's going to be $200 a barrel, and it's just going up and up and up. Well, natural gas is a competing fuel, so if oil goes up, you can expect natural gas to go up as well. They have a very similar relationship. Now, we also, when we're talking about natural gas, we can produce it, we also can store it. Unlike electricity, electricity is really facilitated upon the grid, and there, yes, there's new emerging battery technologies these days, but nothing like we have with natural gas, where we can compress it and store it and save it for later. So we do that by storing gas in facilities all around the country. The predominant method for natural gas being stored is going to be in a depleted oil or gas field. It's heavily compressed and stored underground, much like it's extracted. You also can store it in aquifers and very commonly around the Gulf Coast in salt domes. Each has its own characteristics in terms of efficiency and cost, but I won't get into that. So now every week we take a look at how our natural gas storage is looking. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this graph. It's kind of a common point in the industry of, okay, on every Thursday morning, what's the natural gas storage report looking like? We want to see exactly where our storage level sits across the country, as it gives us a better expectation of where we will stand pre- and post-winter in terms of our natural gas storage. This past winter, once again, we hit a new record in terms of our storage, a little over 4,100, or it was right around 4,100 TCF, or 4.1 TCF. Now, that's a very healthy supply. It's definitely helped keep a lid on prices. If we didn't have that type of supply going into this winter, we'd certainly have been looking at some higher prices. But you know, going forward, we can expect to see a lot less gas in storage. This is going to be a much harsher winter. We are going to have more gas extracted. In fact, in the past 2 months, we've already seen more gas come out of the ground on average than we've seen in about a decade. Okay, so I do want to get into some pricing basics, just so you can understand exactly how natural gas is going to be priced. Natural gas pricing in the United States is determined by 3 components. You have production, which is our NYMEX component that we just discussed. It's the physical commodity. It's sourced from natural gas wells as through imports, and this is going to be the primary cost driver behind natural gas rates. It's the only component that can actually be negotiated. Second, you have your transportation, which is also referred to as basis. This is the physical movement of the commodity through the pipelines. This component cannot be negotiated. However, it can be hedged. Just like NYMEX, basis is traded every single day, and it goes out 10 years plus. And you can say, okay, well, I want to lock in my basis at the prevailing rate, and that can be a fixed component within your rate. I'll get into more of that later, but our final component is going to be distribution. Just like we deliver the electricity through the poles and wires, your local utility performs that same function with natural gas. They maintain the infrastructure, fix outages, etc. This component obviously cannot be hedged, and it's the only component that is actually going to be regulated. So when we are talking about a fixed natural gas rate, we take those first 2 components that we saw on the previous slide, our production, NYMEX, and transportation basis. So when we're talking about a fixed rate, we're talking about fixing both of these components. And this is going to be done through a weighted average, where we say, okay, at the time of execution, here is our NYMEX rate, here's our basis rate, here's what you're expected to use. All goes together into a weighted average formula in order to calculate a fixed rate. Fixed rates are going to be very ideal during rising or uncertain but upward-leaning market conditions. It's going to provide your client with budget certainty, price protection, but I always say fixed prices, they're always going to be a gamble. A great analogy is just like the stock market. You want to buy low and sell high in the stock market. Well, with natural gas, if you want to lock in a fixed rate, you want to buy low with the expectation that the market is going up. Obviously, the market's going to do whatever it wants to do. NYMEX is one of the most volatile indices on the planet. So it's always going to be a gamble. It's always going to be a hedge. That's why we're here to consult you. Sometimes you're going to lock in a fixed rate and you're going to save a tremendous amount of money. Sometimes if the market goes the other way, you're not. But, you know, just like trading stocks on the stock market, if it was that easy, then everyone would be an expert.
And what we do when we consult and the information that we use, just to skip back to the profile I had here, what we use for our projections when we're consulting are actually from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So we're getting it from the formal analysts that are making these projections. It's not Ryan or Henry or Chris or Daryl going, oh, I'm pretty sure that prices are going to go up high, so you should sign on the dotted line. We use as much realistic, formal, unbiased information on these projections as possible. And we put that into the profiles and the analysis that our system shows to display those. So when we're consulting and giving this advice, it's all based off unbiased information, and that's always an important thing to point out and to stress to customers when we are consulting on natural gas is the source of this information, and that's what substantiates the trustworthiness of the consultation that we give.
Right. I mean, we're always going to proceed with the best information possible. Let's go back to that. I'm glad you brought this slide up.
Absolutely.
So this is a standard item on our natural gas analysis. Just like I showed you the historical NYMEX trends earlier, you can see that we are going to present that information to the client as well. This excludes basis costs. It's not regionally specific. This is just where gas is traded on NYMEX. So, you know, when you see those lower prices, that's not where this customer's price has averaged. So you can see what it's done in the past, and now we want to give you a glimpse of the future. So the dotted line in the middle on the forecast is where natural gas is currently trading. Those are natural gas futures through, I think we have that through the end of next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, through the end of 2018.
Right. And you have some upper and lower confidence bounds calculated by the EIA there as well, just to show you the kind of volatility that could be expected at any given time. The upside risk for natural gas is always significantly higher with natural gas, and especially during the winter months. If you have a severe storm come in that lasts for, you know, several days or a week, you can be looking at wild price spikes in natural gas. So if there's any type of supply eruption or just, like I said, an extreme amount of gas being consumed, that's going to drive the market up. So you can always see right there that giant price spike right there. That's a possible scenario projected by the EIA.
And that's the risk that any customer who chooses an index rate is going to face. If they go on the index, prices spike, then their rate's going to blow up as well. So that's the risk of the index price, which is probably the next slide or shortly thereafter, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I always give some commentary on this analysis as well, just a general overview of where the market is, what our outlooks are. I'm trying not to approach it with any kind of salesy lens. I'm not in sales. I'm trying to just give you the nuts and bolts of it, because at the end of the day, we have to take the information that we have and make the best, most informed decision possible to the clients. If it's a situation where it doesn't make sense for them to do anything, it's exactly what our recommendation is going to be.
And more precisely put, the recommendation is to sit and wait for now, and we'll continue to monitor the account, and when the opportunity to lock in and get a contract going comes up, we will take advantage of that opportunity. Just like we do for electricity, we're all here to support the long-term best interest of our customers, and therefore make sure that we're getting the renewals and that we're the first call when they have a question on their electricity or natural gas. And we're the first call that they make. Keep going to the wrong power. There we go.
Okay. And so one thing, I just wanted to go over this real quickly, and I have a similar chart for the variable rates as well, but there's often a lot of confusion from people in terms of, well, how are my natural gas rates being calculated? You know, people, you're going to have buyers that are well educated, and they can look at the natural gas futures and they say, okay, well, why am I going to lock in at this rate when, you know, the market's going, you know, up and down? And well, when you're talking about locking in a fixed rate, you're talking about locking in NYMEX where it's currently being traded, adding your basis cost to that, getting your total rate. So you're doing a weighted average. In this example, this is a 12-month term. There's NYMEX and there's basis for 12 months. You multiply that by the contracted usage, and then you divide that cost total by the usage total. That's your fixed rate. That's exactly how it's calculated. So you're going to have that NYMEX component, which is going to be very transparent and visible for clients to see. They can get on Henry Hub. They can, you know, we can show them that information. Then you have your basis cost, which is going to be higher during the winter time. And, you know, basis cost, this is where you're going to have our profit, supplier profit. You have various other fees that go into it. But, you know, it's fairly basic, and it's just what a lot of people don't understand is you're locking in NYMEX at that time. I mean, yeah, you might have some lower prices over the course of that, but it's just a weighted average. That's all it is. So now I want to talk about variable rates. A variable rate is going to involve one of two things. So you can either hedge that transportation basis component and let your NYMEX component float on the open market, or you can let both of them float. Essentially, you are just, in that latter scenario, you are on a completely variable rate, and you're not locking in anything, you're just going with the flow. So a variable rate is going to be ideal during declining or uncertain but downward-leaning market conditions, or when a client has an uncertain or an ever-changing production schedule. Maybe you're a manufacturing facility, you don't know how much gas you're going to use from month to month. You can't commit to a fixed rate. Maybe you're a new building, you don't know where your usage is going to be. We do a lot of this with electricity variable rates as well. It's always very helpful. So it does directly correlate to natural gas. You're really going to be looking at the same options. Variable rate is going to give you greater flexibility, but like we pointed on earlier, you have that significant market risk. Overall, I do love the variable rates with natural gas as opposed to, I don't love the electricity variable rates. It's too hard to track the information. There's not enough visibility. With natural gas, we have that visibility because we can see at any time what NYMEX is doing, where it's trading. The only reason why we don't offer this more is it's just harder to manage. Unless you are going to be looking at NYMEX every single day and hovering over trying to make a decision on when to lock in certain components, well, oftentimes you're better just going with that fixed rate. But if the market is declining, that's typically when I'm going to look at variable rates. But at any time, if your usage is changing, we can change it. If you want to lock in some advantageous months with NYMEX, we can do that. Like I said, you just have a lot more visibility. So you can see this is the exact same graph that we looked at earlier, only now this has, like I stated earlier, when you lock in a variable rate, you can hedge that transportation basis component. So all this is a weighted average of the basis that we saw on the previous graph. You're just locking it in, you're fixing it. You're going to have the exact same cost outcome as the fixed rate in the initial scenario, only now that NYMEX component is going to change every single month, and so your price is either going to fare better or worse than the previous scenario with the fixed all-inclusive rate. The last thing that I want to touch on in terms of pricing, just like electricity, there's always more to consider. Bandwidth, especially with electricity, of course there's bandwidth added to these contracts, but the reality is no one really tracks it. Suppliers rarely enforce bandwidth, but when it comes to natural gas, it is oftentimes strictly enforced. And you can have bandwidth clauses in your contract that monitor your usage every day or every month. But that's always something to keep in mind. It's not something that we will dismiss, kind of like we do at times with electricity. But there's always other fees to look out for: balancing and storage, where the gas is being delivered to, the city gate or burner tip. That's what we call line losses or shrinkage right there. When you are delivering to the city gate, if your contract stipulates, okay, the gas will be delivered to the city gate and then transported to the burner tip, well, now the customer has to pay that additional fee to have that transported. Usually small, comes out to about the same equivalency of line losses, but something to look out for. But we'll always go over these components. It's an easy yet very complicated product. But finally, let's just get into a quick overview of the Texas natural gas markets. I won't take too much more of your time. I really want to highlight exactly what service regions are available. We have two dominant utilities in Texas for natural gas. That's CenterPoint Energy and Atmos Energy. And actually on January 3rd, Atmos Energy was purchased by CenterPoint Energy. I will go over the specifics of each market right now based on how they currently stand. However, we could be looking at a change. CenterPoint is far more lenient in terms of who can qualify for switching. So I'm hoping to see that now that Atmos has been purchased, we will see that transfer over and make selling gas in Texas a lot easier. So you can see CenterPoint Energy, our primary service region is going to be East Texas, South Texas, and the greater Houston area. It's going to include Houston, Beaumont, Laredo, Lufkin, Nacogdoches, and as far west as New Braunfels. Versus Atmos now, this is North Texas, Central Texas, the Panhandle, and the greater Dallas area. So we have Dallas, Fort Worth, Lubbock, San Antonio, and Austin. Just keep in mind, in any of these cities and regions, though, there's always going to be the possibility of having municipalities, regulated pockets, etc. So the biggest thing to look for from your client is, are you getting a bill from CenterPoint or Atmos Energy?
And it is interesting to point out that two of the biggest regulated electricity areas for electricity do have some opportunity in natural gas with San Antonio and Austin. So if anyone has connections or opportunities that they've just not been able to capitalize on the electricity side, natural gas might be your entryway into those relationships.
So as I mentioned earlier, there are some usage requirements in most markets outside of, in most deregulated markets outside of Texas. There really isn't anything like a usage requirement. Most customers, residential, commercial to large industrial, can switch freely. However, in Texas, it's a little bit more constricted. So CenterPoint is going to be ideal for small commercial up to large industrial clients. The user must average 10 MMBTUs per day on an annual basis, and that comes out to about 36,500 therms annually. Or you can be currently served by a third-party supplier. Or finally, if you were served by a third-party supplier any time within the last 12 months, you'll qualify. Like I said, CenterPoint is very lenient on this policy, so really, we'll get into some customer types on the next slide, but for the most part, a lot of, larger, I would say any mid-size commercial and up should be able to qualify. Atmos, though, much different story. It's specifically reserved for large commercial and industrial users only. Over here, you have to use an average of 50 MMBTUs per day, which comes out to a little over 182,000 therms per year, which in Texas, that's a pretty big amount. And on top of that, you have to have backup generation on site in many instances. They're a little bit more lenient when it comes to customers that are classified as industrial. You can go as low as 20 MMBTUs per day, but Atmos is very, very strict on their usage policy, so don't expect a lot of wiggle room. So getting into the client types, like we said, CenterPoint, I would look at large restaurants, large hotels, maybe even larger municipalities, of course industrial users. Versus Atmos, like I said, large commercial industrial only, large warehouses, manufacturing, steel mills, chemical plants. That's more of who you'd be targeting, but hopefully we will see some more lenient policies from CenterPoint as they move forward with that acquisition. And second to last slide here. So there's some basic contracting and enrollment guidelines. In CenterPoint, you are required to sign at least a 12-month contract if you switch. Enrollments can only occur on the first day of each month, and there's a 15-day enrollment period for clients currently with a third-party supplier. Versus Atmos, users are not required to sign a minimum contract. You can switch at any time, and there is no enrollment period. The last thing that I want to touch on is, like I said earlier, if you want to approach a client, make sure that they're within the CenterPoint or Atmos service territory, not in some type of regulated pocket. And when we do present an opportunity to them, we want to obtain the letter of authorization. We have a different file that is used for Atmos and CenterPoint versus the standard template you're used to, so we'll definitely make that available. We just have to pull usage. We have to look at it and see if they are going to qualify to switch. And last thing, one of the most important things to look for, if you are talking to a client that's with a third-party supplier already, it's really a good idea to make sure that they have a copy of that contract. We have to look out for evergreen clauses. A lot of times, switching in Texas is not overly common like we have in the Northeast. So a lot of times people can be locked into multi-year agreements with every year clauses and not know about it. So we don't want to incur any ETFs for anyone, so always something to look for. And that is my long-winded presentation.
All right, thank you so much for that, Chris. Extremely informative. I know there's a lot of information that is being explained here. Please know that, again, we have your back. We're here to support you, and we're here to keep things as what we want to show to you. We know all the technical information, all the fundamentals, and we want to, of course, teach those, but at the same time, we've got your back. We're here side by side with you every step of the way. And that first step for us as the consultants, as the feet on the street and the voices on the phones, is to simply approach the customer and to begin the opportunity in the conversation. And Daryl, wondering if you can share some of your insight into, is there really any difference between starting a conversation on electricity supply or natural gas supply? What are some things that that everyone might want to keep in mind when going after natural gas customers? What from your experience can you share with us that might be useful?
Thank you, Ryan, and Chris. Great presentation, very informative. Talking about natural gas with clients has really kind of been a value-add proposition for us when discussing and leading in with electricity procurement. So a lot of the times, as Chris noted, for specific clients that you're looking at approaching this with is really important. So I think you got to start there by looking at your portfolio and your book of business and really seeing who would it make sense to approach this opportunity with for natural gas. Obviously, you might have a pretty large renewal book in place, but going back through that and seeing who might be using enough natural gas to really meet the minimum usage requirements. And with the recent acquisition of Atmos by CenterPoint, we might see Atmos, maybe change a little bit as far as their usage requirements are concerned, as we see with CenterPoint. But I think first and foremost is really deciding who you want to approach with the opportunity. Number two, once you have someone that does qualify and you're approaching, is really determining what their internal risk tolerances are, right? And really figuring out, okay, does this client, looking at their load profile just as you would with electric, and deciding, does it make sense for a fixed rate product or an index type based product? We see a lot of times that clients are using gas in the peak winter months for heating, which we refer to as a heat load client versus a flat load, to where they're using gas throughout the year. A lot of the times with the heat loads, there is an opportunity to look at a fixed rate type of product to protect them against any unforeseen market increases during the peak winter months. So that's a conversation that you want to also discuss, especially after reviewing the usage profile that we pull from the utility and the usage data to really determine what type of load profile they are. Obviously, if you're using a little bit more gas, you might be a little bit more attractive to suppliers, as we see with electric, especially with flat loads too, as you're using more consistent gas throughout the year. Usually going to obtain a lower fixed price, and then also see some possibly some lower index prices or lower basis costs. Finally, looking at selling gas outside of Texas tends to be, and I know you're based in Texas, but tends to be a little bit easier conversation to open up because of, as Chris mentioned, the minimum usage requirements to switch away. There's really not many throughout the Midwest and Northeast where you still have pretty heavy, population centers that utilize natural gas, and so we do have internally a 10,000 therm annual minimum to look at that we use as kind of our benchmark. So anyone using over 10,000 therms annually will definitely set that as our minimum. However, we have gone below that to show kind of a value add to some of our current clients that we have for electric long-time renewals, and so we will look at those as one-off, but we really try to stick to that 10,000 therm annual minimum usage outside of Texas.
I want to point out that a kilowatt hour and a therm are two very different units of measurement, not only in the type of energy, of course, but in the actual quantity of it. So you take a 36,500 therm annual account, that's going to be a decent-sized restaurant, something that, first of all, uses natural gas like a restaurant, and real quick and dirty math. You can think that a restaurant that uses 300,000 kilowatt hours, like an IHOP, might use 30,000 therms. It's about, this is not an exact science, but a 1 to 10 for every 1 therm, 10 kilowatt hours, is a good mental math to just get a sense of it. So when we're talking about 100,000 therms annual, you're looking at, for Atmos, you're looking at manufacturing plants, things like that. So they're very restrictive on Atmos, and even in Centerpoint, it's a lot different. While you can, we can definitely serve the boutique real shops for their electricity, they're not going to qualify for the natural gas. And again, we're hand in hand on these approaches with you. So if there's ever questions like, hey, I know a buddy who's got a mechanic shop, and this is how big it is, and spin it around with us, we'll help figure out what customers are worth the opportunity and which ones they won't even be able to touch from the suppliers, which goes to a question that we got from, I believe it was from Maureen, who was asking, I'll send out to both Chris and you, Daryl, what third-party suppliers are out there for natural gas? How many approximately in Texas, and how many of them are actually competitive?
So as you can imagine, there's not a large number of suppliers in Texas, just because there's not the opportunity that you see in other markets. Our biggest suppliers in this market are going to be Luminance and Constellation.
Yeah. CenterPoint on the retail, the retail side.
CenterPoint Energy Services as well. So I know I'm not listing a few others as well. I can't think of them off the top of my head at this exact moment. As you can imagine, I mean, we've definitely closed some large Texas gas deals, but not the number that we normally close in other markets. But yeah, we definitely have some larger suppliers. Constellation, Luminant, CenterPoint Energy Services. Oh, we have Tiger Natural Gas. I almost forgot about those guys. But I would say at any given point, maybe we would be looking at obtaining quotes from 2 to 5 suppliers in this market.
Compared to, 20 to 30 in some of the Midwest and Northeast markets. You tend to find a larger variety of natural gas suppliers throughout the Northeast and Midwest.
But as long as you can beat the utility price, then, there's a conversation to be had. A good follow-up from Maureen is, can we combine multiple locations for natural gas into a single contract to hit those usage qualifiers, for example, much like we can do with electricity?
Unfortunately, no. It is specifically set up by the meter. They do not allow us to aggregate volumes.
Got time for a couple more questions. One from John. He's asking, is there a markup on delivery charges for natural gas, or are they passed through dollar for dollar by the utility?
They are going to be passed through dollar for dollar. We have seen some instances of suppliers trying to tack on additional upstream costs through the indices and through the basis costs themselves. But it's not, at least in my experience, not anything that you're going to see like we've seen with Texas electricity, where you have some suppliers try to tack on a little extra dollar to the distribution cost.
And in terms of on our side of things, for us, it's really just on the rate itself that margin is input, correct?
Yeah, our margin is always going to be in the basis cost.
Now, on a final note, first I want to thank everyone for listening to us. This is really useful information. I just want to point out one thing really quickly on a more general level, because I want everyone to look at where our industry is headed as a whole, as energy consultants. A lot of, I'm reading, headlines such as things like, renewable prices are now the cheapest in the country, the cheapest prices for your renewable power. Well, that's great, and we support renewables. We like that. We want the more green, the better in this country. But that said, electricity and natural gas supply is here to stay. As much as there's been advancements in sustainability and renewable efforts and green power, all of the major infrastructure, that doesn't just include the past infrastructure, but the new infrastructure that's opening up, it's all surrounded off of the core of a natural gas supply. And remember, electricity, the turbines that generate electricity, that feed it into the grid, is fueled by natural gas. So for both electricity and natural gas, that natural gas commodity is the core underlying commodity. It's the single biggest one, and it's the one that's moving the prices up and down by a large amount. It's significantly more influential, natural gas is, than any other fuel. So what that all means is that it's about 70%. 70 in Texas, 70% of our electric generation is by natural gas, and honestly, it moves the price more than 70%. When you see our rates moving up and down every day, every week, every month, and the trends, the long-term trends, short-term trends, that's all fueled by natural gas commodity. That's here to stay. That means that your job, this industry, is here to stay. As we always say, and this is just getting to a core fundamental here of a sales level, the trend is your friend. So us staying dedicated to reviewing natural gas, understanding it, looking at the fundamentals, that's tied in inherently not only to selling the natural gas supply contracts, but to electricity contracts and to how we consult, how we interact, and also the very confidence that we have in this profession. It's all based off of natural gas supply, and it's in a very healthy state. There's been tremendous work and alternatives, and that's great. We need it. At the same time, this graph here goes out to 2040, and we can see that the demand for it's only going to escalate. So we're all in a great industry. We're in a great opportunity to continue to enhance the industry that we're in by doing good jobs for our customers. And that's what our commitment is to all do the best we can for you and for all the clients that we represent to create the most value, which will inherently also create the most opportunity for all of us to find new customers, for new markets to open up as a whole on a broad stroke, for new markets to open up, which will create larger and larger customer bases that we can communicate to. So on the big picture, this industry is in a great shape, got plenty of opportunity, prices are at a favorable position. No matter somewhere, that's another thing about being great on a national level, is that no matter where you want to go, somewhere along the line there's opportunity. In some market for some product, there's always opportunity to call into, and usually it's in our own backyard, as we see in Texas, just like EMEX has been in Texas for 10 years now. So with that, I want to just give a reminder to everyone as one final note, as I scroll back to the end of it, to our sales drive that goes up to Super Bowl weekend. That is still going on, and we encourage everyone to get that touchdown, get as much business closed as possible up through February, of course, going forward. But if you can get those deals done before then, get yourself an extra $1,000 paid on the next commission cycle up front. That's a great thing. We encourage everyone to try their best to get that touchdown, or at least a field goal, right? At least a field goal. So with that, I want to thank everyone for showing up today. This webinar has been recorded. It's been recorded, so this is available for anyone to review in the future. Thanks so much. Everyone have a fantastic Friday, and we'll talk to you next time. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.